What eventually disappeared and no one noticed? Story 1. Our need to know who our neighbors are. I listened to a podcast about human interaction recently, and the host said that the internet slowly made it possible to live without knowing who the people are next door. It used to be that we would hang out with people in our street, or attend dinners, birthdays, and whatnot. Now everyone seems to have no need to even so much as introduce themselves. The only time we do get to know each other is if we have a complaint. Story 2. CD/DVD drives and laptops. I found out about this a month ago. I don't own a laptop or computer that's usable. I have a Lenovo I haven't booted up in 4 years. I was really surprised when my friends who play PC games told me that. When I didn't have Wi-Fi, I'd put in my Aaron's Goes to Jail DVD and fall asleep watching it on the floor of my old apartment. Good times. Story 3. Toys and cereal boxes, more importantly, toys and Cracker Jack. Hell, they don't even come in a box anymore, they come in a bag. And speaking of prizes, you don't get those chance to win under the cap sweepstakes on drinks anymore. Everything is a code that the majority of people probably never take the time to enter on a website. You used to be able to just look under the cap to see if you won, and then mail the cap to that company. Story 4. Somewhere along the way, 9, 5 turned into 8, 5. Yeah, when I hear the song, I'm like, wait, did they get paid for lunch, or just eat at their desk? Or did they actually not work 8 straight hours? They got paid for lunch. The idea was that them being there at lunchtime was because the company paid them to be there the entire time. Companies also used to have company cafeterias that sold decent food at a very reasonable price. Story 5. We're in the process of full-size can of Arizona teas for 99 cents disappearing. I'm seeing a lot of places starting to carry the smaller plastic bottles for 99 cents or the larger plastic bottles for more. I'm honestly surprised that it's lasted for this long at the same price. They've removed the price from most of the cans now. They denied it at first, but most of them are unmarked now. Story 6. Longevity in careers. This is a big one nobody seems to have said. Longevity in careers has largely gone away. People used to get a job and after being there for decades, reap the benefits of being seasoned employees, higher salaries, and better perks. Maybe it's because I work in the entertainment industry, but I feel that longevity in careers has gone away. Meaning, people can be amazing at a job, but after 5+ years, the employers start wondering if they could be doing better with a younger, cheaper candidate for the job. I understand if you ever want to move up in a workplace, they expect you to bring your A game. But 30+ years of being incredible is hard. Some years will be better than others. And if employers don't have loyalty to their employees anymore, it is likely the good employee will be fired or let go at some point. I feel like in recent decades, this has forced many people who normally wouldn't to switch careers. Can someone work successfully up the ladder at any job without having to shift to another company for a promotion? A combination of employers halting upward movement of their staff while they look for new employees to fill higher roles, and the fact that they get bored of their seasoned employees has largely killed the idea of anyone having a single career. I think a big problem is wages and work have stagnated, and so when you want an improvement in your standard, you have to climb the ladder, but they expect the world from you at your own company to do that. So it's easier to look elsewhere with higher pay. You can't just comfortably live off the pay of your currently role anymore as inflation takes hold. I remember when $60K/year was the goal for a fairly successful career. A decade later, under $100K is almost untenable. Story 7. I never see swarms of monarch butterflies anymore. It's a combination of a rise in pesticides combined with an absolute dearth of the plants that the butterflies eat on their journey. If you plant monarch butterfly-friendly gardens, you'll actually likely become a stop on their migration patterns because it's so needed. It should also be noted that they lay their eggs on milkweed plants, and that's the only plants that nurture and grow their larvae into pupae. And milkweed's been heavily removed from gardens in the wild as we grow our cities and agriculture. By planting a number of monarch butterfly gardens, or honestly general pollinator gardens, as well as providing a water source like a puddling fountain, a shallow bowl fountain, or some form of water feature in your gardens, you can really help all pollinators, but specifically monarchs. Due to your question, I live in Minnesota and we see monarchs from time to time, but when you plant the flowers they eat, you can start to see dozens or more during the migration season as they love those plants. Story 8. People fainting when something unexpected happens, and people carrying smelling salts for just such an occasion. It's so 19th century. Story 9. Those god-awful Chevy commercials with the real people, not actors. One day I realized I hadn't seen one in a while, and it was almost as if they'd never existed. Except I knew they had. Man, I hated those damn things. Story 10. Kinda surprised I haven't seen this one yet, but Ronald McDonald. You remember the old clown everywhere in and around McDonald's commercials and stores? Gone. Phased out when that clown scare prank trend was going around. Story 11. I don't know. I didn't notice. Reminds me of a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy quote. You know, said Arthur, it's at times like this when I'm trapped in a Vogan airlock with a man from Beetlejuice and about to die of asphyxiation in deep space that I really wish I'd listened to what my mother told me when I was young. Why, what did she tell you? I don't know. I didn't listen. Story 12. Those rubber bands wristbands shaped like things that you wore on your wrists. Story 13. Gaming consoles at McDonald's or in big markets. In the 90s, I lived in a small town that didn't have any big stores, but there was a bigger town, an hour's drive away, where we did our shopping that had those. In those stores, they had PlayStations and Nintendo 64s out for you to try out. I remember seeing Mario 64 for the first time there, and after some other kids got bored with it, I got to try it out as well. It was magic. I think the last store console I saw was PS3, and the last one I tried was probably GBA. Story 14. TV bumpers. There used to be a little sequence between the show and commercials. Some of them were really interesting and creative. I think my generation remembers the wand IDs on the Disney Channel, where a Disney celeb would use a wand to make the logo. There were also bumpers that were PSAs or other actual content. Story 15. Having many family photographs in homes. Not completely gone, but homes used to be plastered in them. The only times I really noticed them is in homes of older people. Got my wife a digital photo frame for the living room. It has all our family photos rotating with a focus on vacations and adventures. We have another in our bedroom that's for our wedding and honeymoon photos. 10/10, absolutely great investment. So many happy memories, and it never fails to put a smile on her face at least once a day. For parties, we'll purposefully change the photo sets to include anyone who's visiting to see if they catch it, including brand new photos we took at the current party. It's cute and low, key hilarious, when they realize the photo is 5 minutes old. Story 16. Gum with sugar. The majority of chewing gum is sugar-free. Story 17. My favorite illegal streaming websites, just Google online movies, 2023 inches, but replace movies with its translation in another language, preferably Eastern European. Oh, and make sure you have an ad blocker. Story 18. 3D television. There were attempts. Sky launched a 3D channel in the UK, specifically to cater for 3D TVs, broadcasting a load of programs shot with 3D cameras. They pumped quite a bit of cash into signing deals for 3D content, as well producing their own. I recall at the time, there had been a flurry of excitement over this new generation of 3D, which felt much more realistic and immersive than the crappy old red and blue glasses. Sky obviously wanted to be first out of the traps as the premier 3D content producer. They closed it after 5 years. Story 19. Reddit live streams. Remember that guy with a guitar in your feed? He disappeared a long time ago, but you didn't even notice it. Story 20. Plasma TVs. I had one, and it died after we all watched an intervention marathon during COVID. TV repair shops, now that you mention it. It used to be a guy behind a counter with electronic guts all over the place. He'd give you a ticket and you had to listen to the radio for a week or two. My dad was a TV repairman back in the day. It was a gradual fade. It used to be that not every store sold TVs. Walmart didn't until the mid to late 80s, so your repair shops used to be able to order sets for you and make some of their money off of that. This was more the small town guys, not the big city repair shops who already had Best Buys or Circuit Cities. Chinese Asian manufacturing picked up and started dumping cheap basic TV sets in the late 80s and early 90s. They'd sell them at any store that'd carry them. So all of a sudden, Kmart and Walmart were in the TV business, and they'd sell them so low it didn't make sense to repair anything but the big living room TVs. Why would you pay $1.80 to repair the 13 inches TV in your bedroom when you could buy a new one for $1.99? So sales income dried up, as did repair income on the smaller sets. Then in the late 80s/early 90s, there was industry compression. Some of the big manufacturers got out of the industry, sold their mark to a cheaper manufacturer, or went bankrupt. Those who remained, Sony, Panasonic, Quasar, etc., went the route of forced obsolescence and quit making parts for new sets after a few years. So repair shops either turned away a lot of customers or they started harvesting working parts from other dead TVs. The last straw was the ubiquity of surface mount circuit boards. Even if a repair guy had the chops to repair, not replace, a blown resistor or capacitor, it's really freaking hard to repair a surface mount solder job. Story 21. Fireflies aka lightning bugs. I live rural and I used to see hundreds on a warm summer night. Now I get excited if I see just one. I mentioned it to other people who live in the same area as I do, and they were just like, yeah, you're right. I'm a biologist, and we categorize fireflies as bioindicators, meaning if they are a lot in an area, it really says a lot of the environmental quality of that area. They usually thrive in areas where there is less light pollution, since bioluminescence is their primary mode of communication. Insert artificial light in the equation, and you disrupt their mode-species interaction. Story 22. Postcards. And not just in the usual places, like museum gift shops and tourist traps. There was once a time when you could buy at any truck stop or roadside motel a postcard of the small town you were driving through, but not anymore. No point when you can just text your friends a photo. Story 23. Grandfather clocks. It was almost a must-have decor. My company in the 80s gave it as a gift to employees for their 10th anniversary. Story 24. Privacy in your daily life. I live in fear of being randomly filmed one day doing something and going viral. Story 25. Good value for price at restaurants. Restaurants have quietly reduced portion sizes since COVID without restoring them. Noodles and Company, along with many others, advertise large portions like pre-pandemic, but only give to-go sizes even when dining in. All for a higher price. Story 26, Chi-Chi's. As a kid, it was the place to go for a celebration bigger than McDonald's, but not Chuck E. Cheese big. Then one day in the mid-2000s, I looked up and they were all gone. Story 27. There used to be these spicy root beer flavored gummy candies that were shaped like mugs with a foam topping, not the hard root beer barrels, and I haven't met anyone who even remembers them. Story 28. Completely paid for benefits by corporations for employees. Story 29. Audio cassette tape pulled out and tangled in the shrubs of a strip mall. It was the gold standard parking lot decoration of the 90s. Story 30. Refrigerators that would last 30 years instead of 6 years. Just to piss everybody off more about this, refrigerators are mostly non-recyclable, so they just end up in a landfill. The metal outer cabinet and the plastic liner are foamed together and can't be reasonably recycled. And the compressor is full of nasty oil that's usually burned and acidic by the time the refrigerator dies. I'll never buy another LG appliance. Next time my refrigerator shits the bed, I'm going on Craigslist and finding the old almond-colored enameled Frigidaire we had when I was a kid that's probably still kicking around. Story 31, lobster tanks in grocery stores. Not that I particularly want them back, but those are nostalgic AF. Story 32. Girls Gone Wild. Or maybe it's just because I don't really watch Comedy Central anymore. Story 33. Shame in politics. Politicians used to resign in disgrace if caught taking bribes. The secret was that they learned that the only reason they were leaving was because they chose to. Once politicians realized that it was actually incredibly hard to actually force them out of office, they changed tactics to just ignoring the issue and waiting for the news cycle to move on. Our recent First Minster in Northern Ireland was investigated as part of a scandal where a poorly built energy incentive scheme ended up losing £500 OM in taxpayer money. She was accused of either being criminally negligent or actually criminal. The investigation decided it was the first option, just massively incompetent. Did she leave office? Nope. She clammed up and refused to acknowledge it and acted as if everyone was just being petty. Story 34. A common pop culture. In the US at least. Until at least the 80s, most people watched the same TV show, saw the same movies, listened to the same music, could recite the same commercial slogans or jingles, bought into the same fads. I don't know when it happened, but now we are all siloed into highly specific subcultures. I've heard this referred to as the death of the monoculture. Back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, niche subcultures definitely existed. Think like the goth and punk scenes. But even the goth kids in 2000 knew all the characters of Friends. Punk kids in the early 1990s knew about Nirvana, etc. Since the rise of social media, it's been easier to basically surround yourself in your preferred scene and completely avoid others. Algorithmic social media really accelerated this trend, and now you can get a TikTok feed that's entirely tailored toward you and doesn't give you any content that you're not interested in. This started right around when MySpace came around, because the monoculture was definitely still a thing in 2005. Everyone knew who Nickelback, Fall Out Boy, Green Day, 50 Cent, and Eminem were, even if you hated them just because they were so big at the time. And they're still big today because they were the last big artists of the monoculture. But today, when people primarily discover subcultures through YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, Spotify, etc., the algorithm feeds you content that you want while you can completely ignore cultures that you don't care for. I don't think this is the worst thing when it comes to things like music, TV, fashion, etc. But when it comes to things like social movements and politics, it's pretty dangerous. Social media sites will usually push people into an echo chamber that causes them to have a warped worldview. Story 35. Corporate pensions. 30 years ago, it was a standard benefit. 401ks turned out to be an excuse for corporations to junk pensions. Story 36. Color from the world. Everything is becoming grayscale. Look at commercial buildings and fast food buildings. McDonald's used to look fun and exciting. Now they're all gray and boring. In my area, we had the funnest looking McDonald's by the Dallas Zoo, and now it's being renovated for whatever reason to look like a standard gray colored McDonald's. No fun. Story 37. Software that just does what it's supposed to be. Or websites without ads. Man, the internet was cool before the whole corpo buzz. Also, software seems just getting worse with less features, or you're forced to pay more. For example, those video surveillance apps. Story 38. Stupid curved televisions. But the curved monitors are a status symbol in the office. Only the management has them. Story 39. Panama Paradise Papers. Loads of high-profile people were discovered funneling their taxes through offshore tax havens like the Cayman Islands. I can't believe this isn't the main thing we hear about every day in MSM. The culture wars are a distraction from the top 0.0001%, robbing the world blind. Story 40. We used to have these really fat bumblebees in my backyard. No longer see them. They're in my yard every year. You can have them all for free. Just come and get them. Story 41, it is disappearing, but not entirely gone. Big budget TV shows with hour-long episodes, 10 plus episodes in a season, and a season being released yearly. Now we get big budget shows that have at most 8 episodes. An episode length can vary between 40 minutes and an hour and some change, with sometimes 2 or 2.5 years between seasons. I hate that. I know this is mostly to do with COVID, but I miss 10-hour-long episodes and yearly seasons of shows. Anyone remember 24? 24-hour-long episodes per season. Totally unheard of these days. Story 42, horned toads, Oklahoma. We called them horny toads. They used to be very common. I'm nearly 75, nowhere to be found anymore. They were so cool looking. Miss them. Story 43, that most people can never see Milky Way or the beautiful night sky anymore. It eventually got buried under the light pollution. There was once a time when our ancestors struggled to count the stars.